What is new, Speed Duel crew? This is your Speed Duel professor here, and we're going to go over the new ban list that has just dropped for the North America WCQ in Minneapolis 2026. We're going to go over the Speed Duel public events forbidden and limited list. So I will go ahead and put a link in the description below where you can find this information for the public event where the new limited list is going to be taking place. You'll find on this page all the information for the new Forbidden and Limited list. But to kind of make things simpler, I have gone ahead and put everything together on this document and compared it to the last Forbidden and Limited list and pointed out where the changes are from the last limited list to this list here. Forbidden list, our only card we can't play is still My Precious Queen. I think that's fair. It's a very powerful skill. Moving on to limit ones, we do have a lot of changes here. So Battle City Bestie, I think, was a good hit. The free card advantage of being able to draw a card whenever your opponent plays a card or effect on your turn. It was really easy for a lot of decks to take advantage of it. So I think moving it here to 1 is probably a really good idea. So we have next Cocoon of Ultra Evolution. A card moving from only being able to play 2 to being able to play 1. And this might sound like a downgrade at first, but I think it's actually an upgrade for this deck because this card used to be on the limited 2 list with Parasite Paranoid, which was one of the cards that comboed really, really well with this skill. And now you're able to play those 2 cards together, where you can play 2 Parasite Paranoid and 1 Cocoon of Ultra Evolution. And I think it's going to make the insect deck a lot more powerful of a threat than it was before. And it's definitely going to be a deck to look out for. So next we have a couple of floodgates here. Floodgates being cards that kind of stop entire mechanics or change entire mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh! So we have Banisher of the Radiance, which any card that would go to the graveyard is banished instead. This one shut down a lot of cards because any card that needed to go to the graveyard in order to work didn't work anymore. I think this was a good hit. With 1600 attack, it was nothing to scoff at. Our other floodgate, Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo. I think I'm going to be in the minority here. I actually don't love this hit. I think that in advanced modern dueling, I think this card is definitely way too overpowered. I think in Speed Duel, it's balanced by the fact that most decks naturally play normal summonable monsters over 1300 or 1200 attack. And if you weren't, it was very easy to respect the fact that your opponent might be playing Fossil Dyna, and to make to have normal summons in your side deck that you could add in if your opponent was playing it. I think this card was a way to slow down a lot of the fast spamming meta decks, your Amazonas, your Dark Magician, your Fossils, and it made a lot of decks really respect attacking in the face down monsters. I understand that a lot of people were upset about it, but this was a card that I felt like was not only helping defensively, but also help proactively in terms of a lot of decks didn't have counters to Lava Golem, and Fossil Dyna was one of the only ways you could confidently summon a second monster and not have to worry about getting burned out. And I think hitting Fossil Dyna is going to be one of the things that helps burn decks a lot because it's going to be a lot harder to counter their Lava Golem play. Monster Reborn to 1. I have mixed feelings about this because now you can play 2 Foolish Burial and 1 Monster Reborn. Winged Dragon of Ra is going to be a lot harder to play with this being hit to 1. I never really had too many decks where I was playing more than 1 Monster Reborn anyway. I usually played Monster Reborn plus 1 other card from the Limit 2 list. So for me, this doesn't affect a lot of my decks, except for the fact that I would have to take away a different card like a Mystical Space Typhoon or an Offerings to the Doomed, which is a little bit unfortunate. I have the same worry about this as some of the other cards, where I think that this was meant to knock down a lot of top tier decks from being able to push harder for game. Might actually end up helping some decks that like to play Foolish Burial already be able to get to their boss monsters even quicker by playing Foolish Burial plus Monster Reborn. Because I do remember uh, that was a pretty relevant combo when Monster Reborn first came out. Swords Revealing Light to 1. I would have liked to see a different stall card end up on the one of list. I think Swords Revealing Light, I know a lot of people are annoyed by it, but to be frank, I think it was easy enough to counter. There are so many spell and trap destruction cards in this format, especially with being able to play unlimited Galaxy Cyclones, where after you use them to destroy a face down card, you can banish it to destroy a face up. I just think not being prepared for Swords Revealing Light is something that absolutely could be punished by your opponent. Um, so I would have rather see something like Wabaku, where you try and hit it and your opponent is able to chain it, and not only did they get you to waste a card, they still got the effect they wanted anyway. I would have rather seen a different style card on the Limit 1 list. So Limit 2, we're going to see a couple of decks that are kind of nerfed pretty hard down here. So we have Dark Magician is getting hit with Ever Faithful Companions and Magic Grebo in the Limit 2. Also, a lot of them play Allure of Darkness, so they're not going to be able to play that anymore as well. So if they play Ever Faithful Companions, they're going to have to make a choice on what they want their other Limit 1 to be. I will say I felt like Dark Magician was already kind of falling out of favor once people realized how easy it was to counter with Book of Moon or Soul and Luna or Floodgate. So I don't really necessarily see why it's getting hit this hard. I haven't seen it topping a lot of tournaments lately, not even usually getting in the top 3 too often anymore. So a little surprising to me, but that's okay. So we have the Heart of an Armed Dragon deck getting hit here. I think I would have rather seen these in the Limit 3 list, because this definitely kills the deck completely. But I do appreciate the spirit of trying to keep Heart of a Warrior with the intent that it was made for, as well as trying to maybe keep the Armed Dragon with the Armed Dragons or the Ojamas. I do think that letting it be in the Limit 3s and being able to do the combo one time, I don't think would have been unfair, just because, I don't know, I see at our locals, people are so over prepared for Armed Dragon with their Books of Moon, their Mind Crushes, their breakthrough skills, their Lost Winds, their Sphere Rebos. It's just, I think maybe newer players don't know as well how easy it is to counter Armed Dragon level 10 white, because it feels like such an oppressive force when you're first playing Speed Duel. But once you realize, kind of like Dark Magician, just how many easy counters there are to it, I don't know that it warrants being at that part of the list. But I do appreciate the spirit of what they're doing there, of trying to keep the decks separate. We have Joker's Knight getting hit from the Warriors. I don't see it putting in enough work to be at that spot on the limited list, but it does put in consistent enough work for enough different decks that I understand why. We got some cards from Burn and Stall with Lava Golem, Mirage of Nightmare, and Wabaku. Lava Golem and Wabaku, I can definitely get behind. I do think that hitting Lava Golem makes it harder for some decks that maybe had a hard time getting around Amazonas. Are going to have even harder of a time trying to get around Amazonas, because they're not going to be able to put in 3 Lava Golems if they need to. I'm a little sad to see Mirage of Nightmare on here. I do think that deck out was too powerful and it did need to get hit. I'm just a little bit sad that I think that it's also going to be hitting a lot of rogue decks that benefited from Mirage of Nightmare. So, like a good example, in my Gate Guardian Speed Duel Duos build that was going to be coming out here soon, when you summon Gate Guardian, you have to shuffle your whole hand back into the deck. And Mirage of Nightmare was a great card to get your resources back. And then even in some other older decks that I built, Mirage of Nightmare was a good way of just recouping your resources and helping some rogue decks try and keep up with the pace that the meta would set with all of their searches and their floating. So just a little bit sad to see that go. Limit 3, we're going to see some really hard Ishizu deck out hits. So we have, as I predicted, Mudora the Sword Oracle, and Exchange of the Spirit. So if you're playing as I predicted, you're either going to have to play 2 Exchanges of Spirit or 1 Exchange of Spirit and 1 Mudora the Sword Oracle. I think these hits are appropriate. I think this was a good call. Just because it does tend to get a little grindy with deck out decks. Um, Me personally, I feel like I kind of found the counters that I needed. I learned to play around it. I didn't feel like I needed extra help beating a deck out deck, but I also could understand people not wanting to have to alter their deck to be prepared for the deck out deck. I think the one I'm most sad about out of those 3 is going to be Mudora the Sword Oracle. I think similar to Mirage of Nightmare, it's going to be accidentally hitting a lot more rogue decks than I think maybe were anticipated. There aren't a lot of cards that shuffle back, so you have your jar and your pot of avarice. But Mudora was a great, very flexible card for rogue decks where it has decent stats with 15 and 18 on a normal summon. During the grind game, it helps you get cards back. And then also, um, like, take for example a ritual deck. If you used your ritual spells and you drew your very last one, or you drew your pre-preparation of rites, your Mudora will let you put them back in the deck, so then you could use pre-preparation of rites to search for your engine again. And so a lot of decks that need those kinds of resources to necessarily be in their deck, Mudora is a great way of helping get those decks to at least be able to compete and maybe try and keep up a little bit more with the meta decks. So I think that this is another one like Mirage that is going to hit more rogue decks than I think people maybe see coming. Our last couple ones here, we got Vortex Trooper. He was at Limit 2 for quite a while. I don't see him making a big difference at Limit 3. I actually think it might be a little bit worse because as I look at all the cards on Limit 3, almost every card on Limit 3 I would rather play over Vortex Trooper because I feel like they're just more impactful, they're more interactive. So I don't foresee myself playing Vortex Trooper in a lot of decks, even though it's moved to 3, just because the other cards on the Limit 3 list are so powerful. We do have Blast of Chain, so this is hitting our Red Eyes and our Iron Grit Gearfried decks. So it's going to hit the consistency on how often they're going to be able to pull off the Blast of Chain combo. Since Gearfried the Iron Knight, I think he's up here. Yeah, since Gearfried the Iron Knight is also on the Limit 3 of list, they're only going to be able to play a combination of 3 as far as Gearfried and Blast of Chain go. Definitely going to hurt the consistency there. I think that's an okay hit, especially because if you use it with Red Eyes Gearfried Iron Knight, you actually get to hit 2 cards instead of 1. It was just a really powerful and disgusting combo. And then we have Quaking Mirror Force here. I will say when the previous list came out, I was one of the people who was a little bit upset that Quaking Mirror Force wasn't on the original list. But I will say, as time has gone on, and people have been prepared for Quaking Mirror Force, I feel like that a lot of people play Destruction and try and destroy cards before the battle phase because they respect the Mirror Force. And then I also feel like Quaking Mirror Force has done exactly what original Mirror Force did, where it forced gameplay changes, where you had to respect the trap cards, which really for me feels like what Yu-Gi-Oh is all about. You have the meme of you activated my trap card. Quaking Mirror Force was the kind of card that, for example, maybe I put one of my cards in defensive position while the other one ends up attacking to try and force my opponent to decide if they want to Quaking Mirror Force just one monster or if they want to try and save it for both. And really made both me and my opponent think about resource management. And so, or at least, wait until I can get to a point where I can destroy the Quaking Mirror Force. So I thought Quaking Mirror Force was actually, even though I wanted it on the list at first, I think I would actually prefer it staying unlimited. Not only is it destructible without you being able to react, without your opponent attacking you, but it also just changes how the battle phase is played, kind of like when uh, original Mirror Force came out or when Gores came out. And then our newly unlimited decks cards, we have Machine Angel Ritual, which was limited to, is now coming off the list. I don't love this just because Machine Angels were already pretty busted. Last week, our Machine Angel player came in and swept locals and went undefeated, except for a 2-1 versus Iron Grit Gearfried, where they still won the match. They just only lost one game all night. And then tonight, they only lost one match and ended up getting second place. So, and that's with only being able to play 2 Machine Angel Rituals. So I think the deck is going to get even more powerful and more consistent at this point. I think the decks to look out for here as we're coming into, so some of the most impacted in this format, we're going to have Machine Angels definitely got a boost from this. Um, we also inadvertently, I feel like, had Amazonas get a boost from this, just because most of its big competition, like your Deck Out, your Burn, your Dark Magician, your Iron Grit, they all got hit pretty hard by this list. But Amazonas was kind of untouched. I mean, you can kind of count, some people might count Battle City Bestie moving to 1, and you can't play Battle City Bestie and Amazonas Onslaught at the same time. Um, I would definitely argue that most people I've seen succeeding with Amazonas have actually been playing Room for Growth and not Battle City Bestie. So if you have been playing Battle City Bestie, you definitely can just shift to the Room for Growth skill. I also think that insects are a good deck to watch out for. And then I also think that we're looking at a possibility where a lot more rogue decks could definitely find success with how a lot of these cards got hit. Like, for example, Cyberdarks is a great example of a rogue deck that can perform really strong, especially if it's not hindered by your opponent having a bunch of stall cards. My only hope here is that in the future, maybe we can get some of these cards off, not only to help new people learn the format and not have to memorize so many cards on the list, but there are also some that I just really don't think need to be there anymore. Like, for example, um, you know, I'm a, I play competitively and casually. I have 5 Roid decks. I have one that's pretty competitive, and then I have 4 that are more fun. One of them is, much older and completely anime driven. I play 3 submarine roids in that. It doesn't make a difference. And then even in my competitive version, my submarine roid is almost always quaking mirror forest and never gets any battle damage in any way. There's a lot of cards that I just don't think need to continue to be on the list, or at least need to continue to be at the level that they're at. So as far as going forward in the future for this channel, I will say that I've already recorded a bunch of videos ahead of time over the next several months. The biggest reason I did so many ahead of time is because the main reason I did that is because I do have some commitments coming over the next couple of months where I'm not going to be able to do a lot of filming. So I wanted to have some stuff ready to go for you guys. I'm going to try my best to do some alterations and some clarifications before those videos come out. But if I don't get the opportunity to, I'll try and at least uh, put some sort of message that they're under the June 2025 list, and then I will try to the best of my ability to start making some new decks that are based on the new July 2026 ban list that's going to be going into effect for this national qualifiers. This has been your Speed Duel Professor. That's game.